in Essential Engineering and Services from Duke Energy, and he will talk about our changing industry. Joe?
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's good to be back home in Indiana. I grew up in Indiana and spent my first job at Cayuga Generating Station, which is about 80 miles west of here, at a coal plant after getting out of college. Seen a lot of change. Like Paul mentioned, when I first came into this industry, I thought, wow, how boring. My, how things have changed. And, you know, it has been challenging enough and interesting enough to keep me in this industry for almost 25 years now. And it's truly a very, very exciting time to be a part of this industry with all the change that's happening. Through the mergers that we've had, I now find myself in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I currently work and live, but it's sure good to come back home. Okay, my presentation. First of all, everybody read that? Okay. Yes. Yes. Somewhere a lawyer is more comfortable in downtown Charlotte. Okay, here are the things I want to talk with you about today. First of all, I want to give you an update on Duke Energy today. I want to talk about advances in technology, which has been tremendous in recent years. I also want to talk about the fuel markets, coal and natural gas. And then accommodating renewables, and I want to talk to you specifically about the solar penetration that we're seeing in North Carolina. And then show you a chart that shows generation technology cost comparisons. I'm also going to work to help try to get us back on track a little bit. Okay, Duke Energy today. And so we're currently operating in 6 states, about 7 million customers, and about 50,000 megawatts of capacity. What you see here is the culmination of a number of different mergers. Synergy merger was Public Service of Indiana and Cincinnati Gas and Electric that occurred 21 years ago, I believe. Then Synergy merged with Duke Energy or Duke Power about 12 years ago. And then Duke Power merged with Progress. Progress was Carolina Power and Light and Florida Power. And so that merger took place about 4 years. And so that's where we sit today. You see the pie charts for our different regions that show the generation breakdown by fuel type. You see in the Carolinas on the bottom left, pretty evenly split now between gas and coal and nuclear. In the Midwest, predominantly here in Indiana, very heavy coal still. You know, our plants here in Indiana, some of them have coal right underneath them. So we're in the coal fields and enjoying the relatively low price of coal still here. Florida, pretty heavily reliant on natural gas today. Okay, overall, you know, when you look at our entire fleet, you see how the fuel mix has changed over time. You see 2006, very heavily reliant on coal. 2015, pretty evenly split there. And you see in 2020, we've still got some coal retirements in front of us, and you'll see our next wave of gas build on a slide that I have coming up. And you see the emissions, not unlike what John showed for the country on the EEI chart, sizable reductions in SO2 and NOx over the years. Also, we're very proud of the CO2 reduction we've made in the last 10 years, about a 28% reduction in CO2. Okay, here's a slide on the demand for our product. This shows the year-over-year demand growth, not what it used to be. You know, now, maybe 1%, hopefully 1%, probably 0.5%, maybe even flat. Some people think we've seen our highest demand behind us. And I want to talk about some of the changes in technology that are driving that. Here's a chart that shows some efficiency projections that a company made. And it shows the efficiency that is believed that still exists in many appliances and particularly in lighting. You know, refrigeration, that 30% potential reduction, you know, that's something I can relate to. You know, a few years ago, we got a new refrigerator. The old one, kind of loud, ran all the time. Moved it to another area. New one, can't even tell that it runs. I'm not even sure it runs. Seems like it turns on just a few times a day, but much more efficient. Lighting. You know, lighting's a significant piece of our energy demand, also of our capacity requirement. But lighting continues to make many advances. And I've got a slide here next that will show some of those. Okay, so a little bit of a complex chart, but I want to bring your attention to the chart on the left. What that shows is the lighting efficacy, so the amount of illumination you get out for the energy that you put in for these different bulbs. You see on the bottom are the traditional incandescent halogen bulbs. You see the flat light blue line, which are the CFLs, the curlicue bulbs, right? Then you see LEDs, and you see a projection of the efficiency that remains there. When I see this chart, I remember growing up in Indiana in the 70s, and I remember the outside Christmas lights. Remember those big ones? Kinds that would melt snow for about a foot in radius. LEDs don't do that. Very, very significant advances in lighting. The chart on the right shows the cost per bulb. It shows how LEDs are coming down. You know, where you can find me on the weekends is usually in Lowe's or Home Depot, wandering around. I go in there for one thing, wander around for a half hour, and end up getting several things. I was in there a couple weekends ago, and I looked at LED bulbs. You can get LED bulbs now for about $2. And so I bought a box of them. So at my home, you know, right after we finally got the CFLs installed, we're now in the process of changing out all those to LEDs. People are doing that across the country. And so a lot of advances in efficiency out there. Televisions, another one I can relate to. So when I graduated Purdue, 1991, got an apartment, got a job, making a bunch of money. One of the first things I did was go out and buy the biggest, baddest TV that was out there on the market. And it was a 27-inch CRT. Thing weighed 200 pounds. And we still had that in our home until a couple years ago. And it was upstairs, and it was being used probably for video games. And I'd worried for about 2 or 3 years, thinking, how on earth am I ever going to get this thing down the stairs? I finally got it down, and we got rid of it. And we ended up getting a organic LED, one of these fancy ones here on the right. We put it upstairs, and I bet I could have carried it upstairs with one hand. And the energy demand is almost proportional. You know, we have also had one of these plasma TVs. And so much, much more efficient. And so another thing that is reducing the demand for energy. All right, natural gas prices. The shale boom. You know, years ago I thought, boy, I need to see these prices down at this level for a little longer before I believe it. And, you know, advances in this area are really allowing the gas prices to stay down. You know, it used to be that when you drilled for petroleum or gas, you would drill a hole. And if that didn't work, you have to go somewhere else, drill another hole. Well, that didn't work. Go somewhere else, drill a hole. Today, you can drill the hole and then radially go in all different directions from that one spot. These solutions they use to help frack are improving. Solutions are predominantly water, but one thing they put in there is sand. So in that high pressure, the shale is fractured and the sand gets in those crevices. Keep it propped open to help the gas come out. I'm also hearing that they are rubbleizing just outside of the pipes, and that is increasing the flow rate that they're able to get into the pipe. So a lot of advances that are keeping that shale gas price down. I want to draw your attention to the picture here. And so this is a picture of Texas at night a few years ago. You can see Houston, San Antonio, Austin. But I want to bring your attention to the just below San Antonio. Those lights are not from the city. Those lights are from the Eagle Ford Shale region. And so those drillers are really after the liquid hydrocarbons. The natural gas is really a byproduct. You can't easily transport that or efficiently transport that like you can the liquids. And so it was flared off. And so that picture really helped me realize, wow, I get it now. I understand. And so now the infrastructure is being built to help get that gas to where it wants to go. I've got a slide coming up that shows the Marcellus production region. And so this is growth of shale gas over time. And who would have foreseen this? I remember 15 years ago, a lot of the talk was we were going to need to rely on LNG importing just to keep natural gas prices below $15 per million BTU. Well, now we're LNG exporting. And shale has driven a lot of reductions in gas price. The Marcellus region that you see, the largest region there, is an area that is booming. And so we are actually in partnership in building a gas transmission line to help get that gas from the Marcellus region down into North Carolina for economic development and also for gas for our combined cycles and combustion turbines and our next wave of combined cycles that we'll be building. Okay, impacts on generation mix. So this is a trend that shows the electric generation by fuel type. And so you see the black line is the historic generation that the country has had from coal. The convergence that you see with the orange line, that's natural gas. 2016 might be the first year where more electricity is generated from gas than coal. In fact, the first quarter of this year for Duke Energy was the first quarter where we generated more electricity from gas than coal as well. Next wave of gas building. So for Duke Energy, this is what we are building or purchasing in the next 5 years. And so 3,500 megawatts more of gas capacity, primarily in our Carolinas and Florida region. We think that growth in Indiana will lead to a combined cycle, possibly in the 21, 22 time frame. But a lot of gas still being built. Renewables, I want to talk about that just a little bit. And so this shows the proliferation of solar. And you see North Carolina there. It's really not covered with solar panels the way it looks in this map right here. But we are getting a lot of solar farms built in North Carolina. Duke Energy just had a ribbon cutting for our 4th solar plant in North Carolina last week. North Carolina has historically had a 35% investment tax credit for solar. That sunsetted last year, but a tremendous amount of solar has been built and continues to be built in North Carolina. And so we need to anticipate the effect of that. And I've got a slide that helps show that picture. So this is a fall load curve across 24 hours on a typical clear fall day. The very top line shows the 2 peaks, one in the morning when people are waking up and starting their day, one in the evening when people are coming home, beginning to relax. What you see in the orange is a possibility given a certain projection of solar penetration that we see in North Carolina for this company that we operate in North Carolina. And so that looks like about 2,000 megawatts of solar that could be in place in a few years. And so what would happen? You know, the sun peaks in its intensity at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Our peak load is not typically till 5 or 6 o'clock that day. And so the sun peaks at 1 o'clock, and then the generation from solar begins falling off. At the same time, the demand for electricity is rising on our system. And so we need to be much more flexible to anticipate this effect of solar in North Carolina. So we're working very hard in understanding what our true minimum loads are on our coal units and on our gas units, and then how we can ramp quicker. Can we change from 2 megawatts per hour to 6 or to 8? And so a lot of work there to anticipate this effect. And it might be the case where the solar has to be shut off to maintain reliability. I want to take your attention to the dark blue on the bottom. That is the amount of nuclear generation that we have in that region. And so that shows that in this scenario, our generation, and this assumes that we cannot, or that we do not sell electricity out of the region, I might say. So it's conservative from that standpoint. But it's not inconceivable that the amount of generation that we need to provide is less than what our nuclear units are providing. You know, Paul talked earlier about nuclear units like to come up from their refueling outage, stay at full load 18 months until their next one. I'm very jealous of that coming from the coal power plants. And so it could mean that we do need to reduce load on our nuclear plants. So the California duck curve that you've heard of, that's kind of what we're seeing here. It's hard for me to make a duck out of that picture, though, right there. All right, I want to talk about approximate costs of generation technologies today. And so a lot of assumptions go into these bars here. A lot of assumptions, like what is the cost of gas in the future? What is the cost of the combined cycle technology in the future, nuclear plants in the future? But with some assumptions, this is a chart that kind of shows combined cycles still make a lot of sense. Even with the advances that have been made in the solar technology area, combined cycle makes a lot of sense. The new combined cycles are much more efficient. They're much more cost effective. You know, the latest class of combined cycle is probably 25% more cost effective in terms of the initial investment than those built 10 years ago. And natural gas pricing is low as well. The coal bar you see, that assumes that carbon capture and sequestration is required per the greenhouse gas rule for new units. And so a lot of that bar is attributed to CCS. So impacts your heat rate negatively, impacts your net capability, and also comes with a very sizable investment for the capture and sequestration. So that's what I had to share with you all. And in terms of questions, I'll be on the panel with others. And in the interest of time, we might save questions for that period. Thank you all.